Hi, I'm Jay, and I've got an agenda. Welcome back to the J Agenda. I want to start today's video, or this month's video. Actually, I'm behind on producing content, but I got to work and had some other things to do. But anyway, I'm glad you're here. So I want to look at some signs. All right, some things that I notice that seem a bit incongruent or confusing to me. These are just ordinary signs, and I want to start with the first thing I saw in a market, which was a pack of bacon, and it said that it was naturally hardwood smoked. Well, unless the pigs slaughtered themselves and managed to slice themselves up into bacon and hang themselves from a tree in a hickory forest that's on fire, I don't understand how it could be naturally hardwood smoked. Another picture that I've got here is on a canister of disinfecting wipes. And at the bottom, or near the bottom, it says kills 99.9% of all viruses and bacteria and COVID-19. Okay, that's cool. But did you ever think about that 0.1% that it can't kill? I don't know what that is, but I don't want anything to do with it. The next picture is one that I took on my way to work one morning, and it says, "Please don't encourage panhandling!" Exclamation point. The city and local nonprofits help the homeless. Call this number. And I take issue with this. I don't want the city to tell me that I can't help somebody who is asking me for help on a street corner. All this is an attempt by the city to shame poverty. It's to take those people, move them out of the way so they can't be seen by, I don't know, who, the tourists? Tourists or people from out of town? Shove them, get them out of the way. We don't want them on our streets. It's not about safety. I don't care what they say. It's not about safety. Right? That kind of thing makes me upset. And if there is somebody standing under the sign and I got it, I will give them money. I will certainly encourage panhandling. Right? This is an attempt to cover up the faults that are inherent in the system. They don't want to admit that the system is imperfect, that it cannot solve poverty without a massive social shift. And so it's the attempt of the city just to get those people out of the way and have them, call the city social services and get them in some sort of pipeline that won't lift them out of poverty, but will only be a temporary fix for these people. One more sign that I've got here that I want us to look at is that I've seen on the back of a dump truck. Maybe you've seen these, trash trucks, etc. This one happens to say, "Warning, stay back. 200 feet, not responsible for broken windshields." Well, I want you to notice the lettering on these, right? The size of the lettering. If you stepped back from this sign 200 feet, would you know exactly what it said? I've seen signs that even says, "Warning, stay back 300 feet. Warning, stay back 500 feet. That's over 100 yards. I can't read a sign like that. And by the time you get up there to read it, you're already within the boundaries of 200 feet. I don't understand. My guess is some lawyers probably were involved in this. And again, I don't see how this keeps us safe from flying debris when you got to get close enough to read, "Hey, wait a minute, I got to back off another 300 feet. And by then it might be too late, not to mention the fact that you're holding up traffic. All right, now on to the second part. So in part 2 of my agenda, I want to begin what will be a series about where we all are situated within the socioeconomic classes in a capitalist society. Our position within our respective class generally determines our political, social, and worldview, as well as our regard of those within other socioeconomic classes. Political and social ideas and actions are formed out of external material conditions. Ideological, political, and social conflicts then emerge between the various social and economic classes, which are exacerbated through the imposition of the dominant ideology of the ruling class upon the subordinate social classes. That is, there is always a dominant ruling class, and there is a subjugated socioeconomic class that are in constant conflict with each other. Eventually, this class conflict will be resolved in favor of the presently subjugated socioeconomic class, but only after a world-shaking and violent struggle, suppression, and eventual elimination of the present ruling class. To paraphrase a quote, the history of your present society is the history of class struggle. So it's crucial, therefore, that in order to properly analyze and understand the social, political, and economic construct, order, and structures in which you inhabit, that you have a proper grasp of these social divisions, classes, if you will, and their infallible characteristics. Scientific socialists have correctly identified two primary and fundamental socioeconomic classes, the first being the bourgeoisie, and the second, the proletarians. And within these two classes exist various strata. And so that's why this is going to be a series, because it doesn't break down half bourgeoisie and half proletariat, or singularly bourgeoisie and singularly proletariat. There are various strata within those two primary classes. So I want to be sure to look at those as well. So what do these terms mean? What social and political characteristics do each of these classes demonstrate? How are these classes in conflict with one another? How does this class struggle emerge, and what will be the inevitable outcome of this class struggle? Let's begin with definitions of the terms of the social economical classes which are present, evident, and active within the present American capitalist imperial system. In this video, I want to focus solely on one definition and go into the characteristics of this class. And so we begin with the bourgeoisie. According to Britannica, the term bourgeoisie originated in medieval France, where it denoted an inhabitant of a walled town, or a group of people within a walled town. And its overtones became important in the 18th century when the class of professionals, manufacturers, and their literary and political allies, that's an important phrase, began to demand an influence in politics consistent with their economic class. In other words, they wanted to put pressure on, and they wanted to have a say within, say, an aristocratic system, one of kings and queens and dynasties and so forth. As this class began to rise in economic power, or in the accumulation of wealth, they began to understand that wealth gave them political leverage. It gave their class leverage. And so what emerged out of that was a bourgeois revolution against kings and queens and dynasties and things like that, so that the bourgeoisie would be the class which would emerge and dominate society. As difficult as it might be for you to accept, the bourgeoisie has not always existed as a class, or as the dictatorial class under which we are now subjugated. They were a revolutionary class, as I've mentioned, that crushed aristocracies, and they established their class rule over everyone under their boots. Granted, through the bourgeoisie, there have been incredible leaps of progress and technological and industrial development. But this development was not for the sake or not for the good of humanity, but it was only for the sake of their enrichment, rather than for the sake of the needs of all. In a socialist system, social progress and development, the development of labor and industry and production, are not for the profits of a few, but for the good of all. We'll come to that in a later video. Returning to our definition, this violent, wealthy, and powerful class set up their own communities and separated from the rest of society. They ruled from a position of privilege and dominance, becoming, if you will, a new form of authoritarianism committed to the acquisition, ownership, and management of the means of all social labor, of all raw materials, of all commodity production, communication, transportation, for their own enrichment, social, political power, and supremacy. The characteristic of the present ruling bourgeois remains the same. What's more is that this class will, when it feels a challenge from the masses underneath them, will use every means available to them, especially the repressive forces of the bourgeois state, including the police, let's face it, they don't serve us, they serve the interests of the bourgeois state, their property and their interests first, assisting the bourgeois to maintain their power over the organs of the state. And they'll use the repressive forces to undermine and crush any threat arising from underneath. The present ruling class can exhibit both competition and unity. They can be very cutthroat in competition among themselves. This is also how monopolies develop. But when their interests and their ideas and their class position, their dominance, and the existence of their class is threatened by workers, that is, the proletarians, that other class, the bourgeoisie acts together. They all come together to protect itself. This becomes apparent when the rights of exploitation or capital accumulation or the ability of capital to operate freely comes under attack. When the bourgeoisie speaks of freedom and rights, it's not the workers' rights or freedoms they're interested in. It's their right and freedom to exploit others and the preservation of that system. The reaction of the bourgeoisie may involve common political action and ideological unity. And it is when these come together that the bourgeoisie, as a class, exists and moves and has its being in its fullest form. And we see this very clearly within the American political and media systems. The notion of two separate ideologies among Democrats, for instance, or Republicans, is bogus. That's a bogus idea. These two political identities will always join forces if their class feels, and the class that they serve, remember, both the Democrats and the Republicans, they serve the ruling class, not you. Get that out of your head. They serve the ruling class. They will join forces when they feel the ruling class is being threatened from the masses. And they will do all that they can, even pitting the working class against itself, which they do very, very skillfully. That's part of the idea behind this, the controversy over immigration right now, right, is that they've got one part of the working class looking down on another part of the working class saying, what are you doing here? You're taking our jobs. And meanwhile, there's another part of the bourgeoisie that says, well, we can fix that for you. Just vote for us and we'll stop that immigration while that other group lets immigration occur. It's all a big game, pitting worker against worker. Because what would happen if we, as workers, as the proletariat, began to become cohesive and united, and we withheld our labor from them? So they exercise this repression to maintain economic and social stability, to preserve their class dictatorship over the masses. So that's all for the agenda for this time. And in the next video, we'll take a look into the insecure and the political wavering substrate of the bourgeoisie class that is known as the petty bourgeoisie or the little capitalists. Hey, thanks for watching. Please be sure to hit the like, subscribe, and I will see you next time.